everybody, this is Hallie Hunt. I'm your Dean of Students, and welcome to our Friday afternoon webinar series. This week, we're going to be talking about how to challenge a grade, which in university language, we call that the academic appeals process. But right now, at the end of the semester, we are getting a lot of inquiries from you about what do you do if you don't agree with the grade that your faculty member has given you. And I'm hoping that today's panelists will help explain the situation. So I'm going to turn this over and allow them to introduce themselves. They are amazing colleagues from across the university, and I'm really lucky, or we're all really lucky, that they agreed to help us out today.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chalea Forgis, and I'm the Assistant Director for Strategic Initiatives within the Vice President of Student Affairs Office. I am connected to the academic appeals process as I serve as the coordinator of the process to help make sure meetings are going and all the policies are followed through the process.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Amanda Davidson, and I'm the Associate Dean of Students and Director of Student Conduct. And my role in the academic appeals process, I oversee part of the academic dishonesty process, and so that's where I'm connected to this appeal process.
Hello, everyone. My name's Ezra Bakar, and I'm the Office Coordinator at the Dean of Students Office. And my role here is to monitor the chat and to keep track of all of your questions. So if you do have any questions throughout the duration of the webinar, please feel free to send them in the chat. I will be the only one who will be seeing them.
Well, thank you, everybody. Chalea, I think I'm going to begin with you. Some people know what an academic appeal is and some people don't. And so I'm wondering if you could explain to us what the academic appeal is and why a student might choose to go through this process.
Absolutely, thank you. So we have two separate situations where an academic appeal may be requested by a student. The first is academic dishonesty. When a faculty member has alleged that a student individually or as part of a group has performed an act of academic dishonesty and has penalized the student for the act, the student has a right to contest the allegations and/or the penalty through the academic appeals process. The second is a student who has alleged capricious, arbitrary, or prejudicial treatment in the assignment of a course grade also has the right to contest that grade through the academic appeals process. The student must present a preponderance of evidence that the faculty member acted arbitrarily, as we assume the individuals who assigned the grade were fair and objective through the assignment. An important thing and question we also get through the process is, who is the Academic Appeals Board? The Academic Appeals Board is actually two students sit on the board that are appointed through the Associated Students, two faculty members that are elected through our Academic Senate, and then one faculty member who is a part of the Academic Standards Committee. So it is a wide range of people from many academic departments, and students sit on that as a part of the process as well.
Thanks, Julie. I think it's interesting that we have students on our panel, and I think for a lot of students that helps make them feel a little bit better that somebody who understands their situation might be helping to make a decision. Can you talk about the role that students play on that committee?
Sure, the students actually have as much say and voting power as our faculty members. So amongst the 5 people that are appointed, which are the 5 voting members of the Academic Appeal Board, the students receive all the same information. The students' voices are listened to and recorded in minutes of those meetings, and their vote counts exactly the same as the other faculty member on the board.
Thank you very much. You know, the other thing that you said was that students need to prove by a preponderance of evidence that the grade was arbitrary or that they didn't engage in academic misconduct. I'm wondering, for those of us who don't work in preponderance of the evidence all the time, what does that mean? And I'll send it to you, Chalea, but if you'd rather punt it to Amanda, because I do know that that's her jam, that you can do that too.
I'll start and Amanda can fill in what I missed. So really what we're looking for is documentation. And in a few minutes, we'll go through what that process looks like. But for just the students to say the professor was arbitrary in this grade, that's not anything that we can move off of. So we need to see grade books, we need to see reasons, we need to hear what brings that student to believe that. So we need documentation, we need examples, and we need proof, as it's not just a word, a student's word against a faculty word as well. Amanda, I don't know what you want to add to that.
I think you did a great job, Chalea. The only things that I will add is, that preponderance is a standard of proof. And so it's something used to weigh evidence. And so what Chalea referred to as documentation can really be evidence. And so faculty have to make sure that they have some sort of evidence to prove that it's more likely than not that either the violation occurred or the misconduct occurred, or, for a student that's trying to show they have enough evidence to show that the faculty member made a decision that was arbitrary or capricious about their grade, they would have to show a substantial amount of evidence. And it doesn't mean you have to have all the evidence or 100% proof or anything of that standard. It's really like a 51-50. So the greater weight of the credible evidence. Some people refer to that as the weight of a feather, what tips the scale. So that's a great example as well.
Thank you. Thank you for that explanation, both of you. Amanda, can you please tell us a little bit more about the academic dishonesty portion of the academic appeal?
Yeah, thanks, Hallie. So as Chalea mentioned, there's a couple different reasons why you might want to submit an appeal. And one of those, I think that one of the most common is for an academic dishonesty incident that may have occurred. And so students may get notified by their faculty member through email, in person, or in a meeting that their faculty member believes that they violated the academic dishonesty policy by either cheating, plagiarism, or some form of academic misconduct. Sometimes students get that notification, maybe that's from the Office of Student Conduct after the faculty member has reported it to our office, or maybe it's directly to the student, which it should be. First initially, and they feel like maybe there's not enough evidence to show that they committed an academic dishonesty violation, or maybe they feel like they did not commit the academic dishonesty, but maybe there's a misperception of what happened. Sometimes during test taking, people may look at their phones, and if faculty see a pattern, or they think they believe somebody may have used resources that weren't supposed to be accessed, like titanium or online resources during the exam, they may believe that the student committed academic dishonesty. So maybe they were just looking at a phone call they got. Granted, you shouldn't probably be using your phone during test times, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you committed academic dishonesty. And so a student may want to appeal that and have evidence or proof that they can show that they didn't commit academic dishonesty. What I'll also add to that is sometimes these two reasons can overlap. So as Chalea mentioned, that you could feel a faculty member graded you arbitrarily, or maybe that they're finding you responsible for committing academic dishonesty for a capricious reason. And so sometimes we get students that feel even the violation itself may be unwarranted or not have substantial reasoning behind it. And so they may want to appeal. And it doesn't really matter if they apply to both. It's the same process. So you can submit an appeal for either and or both. And what I also will add to that is a lot of times when students are meeting with staff in my office, they may share some experiences that they have with faculty that are not so great, and maybe they feel like they were treated unfairly. And so there's a way that we can address those complaints and concerns that may not directly be related to the academic dishonesty, but sometimes they may be intertwined, and you can still go through the academic appeals process if that is a situation that you may find yourself in.
Thank you, Amanda. Students, I really want to underscore one of the things that Amanda just said. You should not have your cell phones out when you're taking an exam. I know we live in a world where everybody has their cell phone on them 24/7, but I can't tell you the number of issues that we have that get reported to my office because students had their cell phones on their desk. So if you want to, I think the best way to avoid any kind of accusation of academic dishonesty is to keep your phones in your bags and keep your bags closed during your exams. I know that exams have passed for this semester, but for next semester, keep that in mind. Amanda, I want to go back to you. How do students submit an academic appeal? What do they have to do?
Yeah, so basically to submit an academic appeal, there's a certain number of steps that you need to follow in order to submit that appeal. And I believe that we were going to show the website because Chalea actually created this wonderful resource on this Division of Student Affairs website that actually talks through and gives a little bit of a flow chart for how you might submit an academic appeal. Chalea, did you want to elaborate a little bit on the form that you created?
Sure, we put everything up there just because this question is asked all the time. And some people think by just sending an email that says, I'd like to submit my academic appeal, that it starts the process. But the process is actually a little bit more involved than that. And we need students to make sure they follow along because it makes the process easier for them and with our faculty in the entire process. So the few recommendations we have before you're submitting an appeal is that before you submit an appeal, that a student has to make every effort to resolve the situation with a faculty member. That's reaching out to your faculty member. Right now, since we're not on campus, that might be through a Zoom, that might be through email, finding a way to connect and have an opportunity to have a conversation with that faculty. We do highly recommend that for our students that you document when this happens. Keep your emails that you send so that this is proof that we'll use in our evidence later, right? That you reached out to a faculty or made every attempt to reach out to that faculty. And then you have the option if that faculty, if you were able to resolve that with the faculty, that you could go up to your department chair within your college or wherever the class may be offered. It might not be within your major. It might be one of your general education or your minor classes. And again, document when this happened, document the conversations and notes from those conversations. And if you're still not satisfied and not getting listened to or not hearing the result that you're hoping for, you could go up to the dean of the college, or they might assign a designee, one of their associate deans, to work with you. That person will listen to you and help you through the academic appeals process and kind of explain to you a little bit more than what maybe our website might have. And then after you've gone through all those steps, that you can submit an academic appeal. So this is where we go to the website. So what are the important parts of an academic appeal? In your initial letter, we need your full name, your address, your CWID, your contact number, your class level. You can follow along and read through it, but we need all of that information so that we can make sure that we're working with the right person. There's a lot of times that we have students with the same names and we don't want to get mixed up in doing different things like that. And then we need to know the name of the course number, the semester you're taking. Amanda's going to go over the timeline with us in a little bit, and the instructor's name. And then a letter outlining the allegations. Your letter must state what resolution what you are seeking. There's an example. If you got a test score and you thought you should have gotten a C instead of an F, what would you like us to do? You would like the C perhaps, or you would like a B, depending based on the test scores, or maybe what the syllabus had as points that you thought you deserve a higher grade. So you need to tell us what you're looking for. And then you need to provide specific detailed information. And some of that will be those documentations of those faculty conversations that you had and with the department chair. It might be your course grade book, some of the titanium information, classwork, and the syllabus might be important if you feel like that's an important part of your appeal. It is important to know that the Academic Appeals Board will not regrade or reevaluate any of your work. So if you have a math grade and you don't like the way the teacher gave you credit, that is not something the Academic Appeal Board does. And then you email all of your documentation to our Academic Appeals email. And then at that point, we have a faculty coordinator that reads through the information, makes sure nothing's missing, and they will communicate with you through email if there is something missing. And once your file is complete, it gets sent to the Academic Appeals Board. It is important to know that a copy of your appeal will be sent and shared with the faculty member, because this allows them to respond to your allegations. And then appeals are considered on an individual basis. Earlier, we talked that if under academic dishonesty, it could be an individual or a group. If it is a group, everyone submits their own individual appeal. It is not submitted in a group setting. So that's a lot of information, but it's also all of on our website, and we're hoping that's helpful because of all of that information.
Thank you, Chalea. You know, I think it's really critical that you let students know that their appeal is going to be sent to their faculty member. So students, what that means is you tell us the truth, tell us what happened from your perspective, but also if it were me, I would try not to be inflammatory, even if you're really upset, because your faculty member will see that. And just think about what you would want them to know versus what opinions you wouldn't want in there. Chalea, a question that I had for you, you said that the board does not regrade or reassign a grade. What does the board decide?
The board has a few different things. If it is an academic dishonesty, right, we would review those policies and see if the faculty provided enough information that the board felt that it should be kept or not kept, turned or overturned, right, the decision. And then when we go into arbitrary and capricious, if it is a grade that the student felt that they received a lower grade than they earned or that they felt like they deserved, we look at that and we look at maybe what other test scores were provided. Sometimes faculty will provide us their grade book and we can see a consistency or if there's attached. We can look at the fair grading policies or sometimes projects that don't have a rubric and are just up to a teacher's or a professor's, just their style, what their expectations are. So we just try to look at to make sure that everybody in the class was treated fairly and equally.
Thank you. Amanda, I'm wondering if there is a time limit on when somebody can appeal. So if somebody got a grade that they didn't like or didn't agree with 2 years ago, can they still submit an appeal for that?
Wouldn't that be great if there was no timeline, but actually there is a deadline. And so I'm happy to share a document that we created that kind of goes through what that timeline is, because there's a wide variety of things that could impact this. And honestly, as someone who deals with this process a lot in my everyday work, I'm familiar with it, but it doesn't mean even for myself that it's easy to follow because there's so many different timelines depending on when things get initiated. So what I tried to do here was just give you all a general timeline. And then once I go through this, we'll actually go through a worksheet that we created. So that way it would make it a little bit easier for you to follow along depending on if you were submitting an appeal. So just generally, this top section right here, appeals are only accepted within a certain time frame from the completion of a course. And in the UPS document, it's specifically in section C. So you can scroll all the way down to that point to get this text if you're looking in the policy document. But the summary of that is basically that if you have a academic dishonesty allegation, or if you want to appeal for the arbitrary or capricious grading, you would need to initiate that process within 60 calendar days of the first day of classes of the regular semester following the grade assignment. So let me kind of gel that down a little bit. Basically, if you were going to appeal a grade for spring semester 2020, you would have 60 calendar days from the start of the fall 2020 classes. So they typically follow the semester after you have the course, and summer sessions are not reviewed at that time. They're reviewed the following semester just because faculty aren't necessarily working during the summer session. So the committee isn't meeting. However, there are circumstances that they might meet, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So from that point, what it means is you need to initiate the process. So let's say you were informed that you committed academic dishonesty in the spring. As soon as you are informed, you can begin the process that Chalea went over and start to talk with the faculty, the department chair, or the dean. But you have no later than 60 working days into the next semester in order to initiate it. Once you initiate that process, you will meet with those folks that you are required to through the process and make sure you document that. I'll just reiterate what Chalea mentioned because it's important to show that you have had those meetings. And then let's say you go through all of those meetings or contact all of those individuals and they don't agree that, you know, you didn't commit academic dishonesty, or they aren't going to change your grade. Then you would need to submit the written appeal. And that written appeal must be submitted within 90 calendar days of the first day of classes. So you'd add another 30 to those 60 working days. And pretty much that is a written submission to the appeals board coordinator. And on the website that Chalea just showed, you can find all of the information of where you would need to submit that, and even a helpful guide on how to submit a written appeal. And then finally, the university will attempt to conclude the entire process within 180 calendar days from the date that you submit the appeal to the appeals coordinator. So that, I know, seems like an overwhelming time frame. What I will tell you is I've seen this process occur, and typically they come in a lot sooner than that, but that is the deadline to which the final opportunity for the process to finish. So you can expect at least within that time frame. Going to a little bit more detail about what you can expect with timeframes about the process when you submit your written appeal. In particular, once you submit it to the appeals board coordinator, what they will do is they will submit and share your appeal, your written appeal, with the faculty members so they can respond to it, as was mentioned earlier. And they have 2 calendar weeks or 14 days to provide that copy to the faculty member. And then the faculty member has about 3 calendar weeks in order to respond to that. So that can tell you how long it may or may not take to just go through that initial process. And then once it's reviewed and responded to, then the Academic Appeals Board will make a decision. And part of their decision making, they may or may not ask you for a hearing. So a hearing is maybe a live meeting, or maybe they meet with you individually and then the faculty member. And basically what they're trying to do is gather more information. Maybe they felt that in the written submission from both you and the faculty member, there wasn't enough information to help them make the decision. So they may call a hearing. And that may impact the time frame because it just varies on your availability, the faculty member's availability. But again, just keeping in context that ultimately they're trying to resolve this within the 180 calendar days. So let's say that you either have a hearing or don't have a hearing. The appeals board makes a decision either way. And if they decide to recommend to change the grade, they will notify your faculty member, and the faculty member has about 10 working days, or sorry, 10 working days. I get confused sometimes. 10 working days to actually implement that change. And you'll notice, what I just stumbled upon was the working days versus the calendar days. And I'll talk about that difference in a little bit. But that's really important because typically working days are business days and faculty are not usually working on the weekend. So that's why it's working days. And then ultimately, if there are other suggestions, maybe it's not a change in the grade, or maybe they want the faculty member to review with some other administrators to determine a better outcome to what was given, then they have 30 calendar days in order to consult and then come up with a recommended outcome. And then you would be notified of that. So I know that's a lot. It's, I think ultimately the general timeline is what you should follow. And I think it'll be the most helpful part of this. I mentioned a little bit earlier that there are special circumstances. And so if you are a graduating senior in your final semester and have a grade that might impact your eligibility for graduation, they may have an ad hoc appeals committee join in the summer in order to review your appeal. So that way they can make a decision, because that can't carry on till the fall because it impacts graduation. This is the same for students who may be disqualified, specifically graduate students from their program, and maybe this appeal really impacts whether they can take courses in the fall or in the summer. And so that would need to be met with and dealt with earlier. And then the last reason that there might be a special circumstance is because a post-baccalaureate student wishes to appeal their grade for maybe a certificate program, and because that certificate program might impact their enrollment in the future, they may need to, again, speedy that decision. And then lastly, just to kind of cover this in some things that you should take into consideration with this is that in the policy, it gives you calendar days versus working days. What does that mean? Calendar days are the full calendar. So this includes weekends and holidays, basically your Monday through Sunday. For working days, these are days that either campus is not closed or the Monday through Friday workday. So just note those differences when you're expecting a response or adding dates and counting down those deadlines. And then ultimately, one thing I encourage students to do is whenever you begin the appeals process, it's really helpful to pull up the CSUF website, and I linked it here, where it gives you the academic calendar. This will also come in handy if you're looking for your, when grades are due or what holidays we have in the semester. But it basically breaks down about 4 semesters worth of time frame. So you can kind of look at when grades will be posted or when the first classes of the next regular semester are. And so that's really important. And then lastly on here, for academic dishonesty violations, it's also important to note that your faculty have a wide time frame that they can report academic dishonesty. So they have to report it as soon as possible, but in no specific circumstance, no later than 30 calendar days after the first day of classes of the regular semester. So it can be 30 days into the fall that your faculty member reports academic dishonesty that happened in the spring. So I just wanted to make sure folks were aware of those things as well, because they do come into play with this. Okay, and now we're just gonna spend really quickly just going through. I gave you a lot of info, so let's make this digestible. So here's a worksheet that normally wouldn't be filled in with these dates, but you can see on the left side there, it calls for a date. And so this is what you would look at for your individual circumstance and fill those dates in, and it tells you what you should consider or what you should do. So it's important to start off with the first part and looking at when did this violation occur, alleged violation occur, or what semester did you get the grade and when was the date that you were notified. You can take action and start the process immediately, and I encourage students to do that because it's easier right after it's happened to have these conversations rather than wait till the next semester. But you want to make sure that you have documentation of that communication and those meetings. The next step here would be calculating the 60 calendar days from the first day of classes. So if you had a situation that you wanted to appeal this spring, then your date in the fall of 2020 would be October 20th, 2020. So that's 60 calendar days from the first day of classes, which is August 22nd. And then it just basically takes you through what you should be doing for action items. The next one, you would count out 90 calendar days. So this is the deadline that you need to submit your written appeal. And that date would be November 19th. So you kind of get the feel here how we're just counting from the start of the academic calendar. And then lastly, the 180 days that you can expect your appeal to be resolved or communicated would be February 17, 2021. And that is when the complete last day that they would have to notify you what the outcome of your appeal would be. And then ultimately, this last section here is just talking about what I referenced about the process with decision making. It's not something I think people have to memorize, but I just put it there to make sure you have something to reference.
Thank you, Amanda. Students, I have to say, it's not the most clear-cut process, but it is outlined, and the team that you see here are here to try to help you get through it. But it is really critical that you meet those deadlines because it's not an excuse that's taken into consideration by the appeals board if you miss a deadline. Sometimes they won't even consider your appeal if you don't meet those deadlines. So now you know, and if you need help, let us know. I think we have time for a couple of questions, and Ezra has let me know that there are some questions, so I'm going to turn this over to Ezra.
Hi, Hallie. Thank you, Chalea and Amanda, for that very helpful information. I know as a student personally, it's always good to know what our options are should this happen in the future to us. So thank you for letting us know. We do have a few questions. Our first question is, what do I do if my professor is not responding or answering my emails?
I can take that one, Ezra. So there might be a lot of reasons why a faculty member might not be responsive, and maybe they've notified you and it's after the semester, after final exams, and grading gets overwhelming, so maybe they haven't quite gotten to the emails yet, so that might cause a delay. Or maybe they've responded back to you or made up their mind and don't want to communicate that. That still is not, you should still communicate with the next level. So if your faculty member isn't responding, you can still shoot them an email just confirming that, hey, I'm reaching out because I would like to appeal my grade or appeal this academic dishonesty. Since I haven't gotten a response, I'm going to connect with the department chair. Since they would be the next person in the process, you can just continue on. And the lack of response shouldn't be a reason why you can't proceed with the process. And that's really important. And usually you might get a response after you've reached out to the department chair, or the next person would be the dean or assistant dean, or sorry, associate dean.
Thank you for that very helpful information, Amanda. Our next question is kind of along the same lines. It's from a student who is inquiring, if they don't have a good relationship with their faculty member, can they skip that step and just email the department chair?
I'll go ahead and answer that, Ezra. We really encourage students to talk to their faculty member. This is a part of the process for a reason. The faculty member is in the classroom with the student and having that experience, whatever that may be. So it's very important that despite your relationship or lack thereof, that there is communication with that professor to go through the process in the right way. But then going back to Amanda, if there's silence on the other end, then we do not let that stop the process as well.
Thank you, Chalea. Our last question is about credit and no credit. This is a student who missed the credit no credit deadline and is wondering if this is the process to request that change.
I can take that one, Ezra. So to be very specific, this is not the process that you want to go through. There is a separate process, and they've linked this, and there's instructions on how you can go about that. That is a separate circumstance, and we're going to show you right now where that lies. So you could submit a petition for a retroactive change of that grading. So you would fill out this form and submit that, and then you would receive a response in regards to the credit, no credit. But that would be an entirely separate process than the appeal.
Okay, thank you, Ezra. I think that was it, right?
Those were all the questions we had.
Okay. Well, Titans, I just want to say thank you for joining us. It can be very stressful when you feel like the grade that you received is not the grade that you earned. And so the whole point of this is to make sure that you understand that you have the ability to challenge a grade if you feel like it's necessary, but also that it's not just for any time you just disagree, right? I mean, you've got to have a reason for why you're challenging the appeal in order to have your grade appeal be successful. So I hope this information has been helpful. Thank you so much, Chalea and Amanda and Ezra, for spending time with us this afternoon to explain it to Titans. And students, if you have friends who you think would benefit from this, who weren't able to be here today, know that this is going to be posted to our website next Tuesday, and feel free to tell your friends, because this is something that a lot of people are dealing with right now. I hope that you all have a great weekend. Thank you so much for joining us, and be safe out there this weekend. Thanks all. Bye.